On the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set, it was meant to be just another night, with the cameras rolling, the music blaring, and the audience anticipating the next thrilling episode. What transpired behind the scenes became one of the most startling, breathtaking, and intense moments in the history of reality television. Fans of Jones and Chrissy Lampkin, whom they had followed for years, were deeply shaken by a betrayal. According to sources, the evening started off like any other as they both got ready for the performance, chatting with their staff and practicing lines. However, behind the surface, tension had been rising for months due to minor disagreements that had not been settled. Silently brewing are unspoken annoyances and the ongoing pressure of celebrity. Then everything went haywire. According to reports, a reliable source into Jim's inner circle revealed private video showing Chrissy's emotional collapse and Jim's passionate response. What started out as a private dispute turned into a public spectacle, leaving Jim and Chrissy feeling vulnerable, deceived, and enraged. The production crew, their team, and above all their relationship were all rocked by the leak. Fans at home were in disbelief as they watched the leaked video over and over again, attempting to put together what caused this unheard of breakdown. The leak was not the only issue for Jim and Chrissy. It was about trust, loyalty, and realizing that even those closest to them could suddenly turn on them. Their relationship, their trust, and their career would all be irrevocably altered by this night. Fans would never forget the drama, confrontation, and emotional reckoning that would ensue from what transpired backstage. Backstage at that fateful. It was electric at night, but not in a good way. Atlanta's Love and Hip Hop set was typically a hive of activity, laughter, and the typical stress of reality TV production. However, this evening was unique. There was a hanging item, a mixture of excitement, anxiety, and an unseen storm simmering beneath the surface. It was felt by everyone on the set. Chrissy Lampkin and Jim Jones were tense. Jim was the first to arrive. A measured, almost timid pace took the place of his customary confident stride. His jaw was taut, exposing the tension that was boiling beneath it, and his hood was drawn down, sunglasses protecting his eyes. He passed the cameras and crew with careful, even mechanical motions. Sensing the increased tension, Tone, one of his closest buddies, remained nearby. He was aware that a single inappropriate phrase or gesture may start a fire that would be impossible to put out. Soon later, Chrissy showed there, passing the cameras with her customary grace. She made no eye contact with Jim, but the tightness in her shoulders revealed the emotional weight she carried. She walked down the corridor to her dressing room, her eyes on her phone. The production crew acted swiftly to avoid any contact. The tension had been growing for weeks, maybe months, and it was known that the couple's energy was unstable and erratic. Minor disputes, whatever had previously diminished, now had weight, made worse by the stress of being videotaped all the time. Unspoken annoyances, small insults, and insignificant remarks had all added up, and they were on the verge of losing it tonight. Silently, almost subtly, it started. A casual comment made by one of Jim's longtime crew members seemed innocuous, but the timing was crucial. Chrissy, who was already emotionally spent, lost it. With a trembling yet strong voice that broke through the background bustle of the busy set, she shouted, "You think that's funny?" The comment, though minor in context, felt like the final straw, the catalyst that would unleash the storm that everyone backstage had been sensing. Jim raised his hands in the air, raised to try to defuse the situation, but Chrissy refused to give up. "Refrain from interfering," she stated sternly. "You are not the focus of this. Respect is at issue here." For the first time in weeks, she had a ferocious expression in her eyes. The wall between them seemed to have finally cracked. The dispute quickly became heated. Fueled by a mixture of hurt, fury, and long-suppressed irritation, Chrissy's voice soared. "You always let them disrespect me. You choose them over me every single time," she yelled. Her statements were scathing and piercing. Jim was taken by surprise and reacted defensively. "They are not my preference over you. I simply cannot exert control over everyone." There was a mixture of despair and desperation in his voice. His crew remained mute, uncertain of whether to stay out of the crossfire or get in. This was more than a dispute. Years of unresolved tension were exposed during the confrontation. Tone, aware of the worsening circumstances, intervened with caution. "You guys need to relax. In his words, "Not here, not now," Chrissy, however, turned against him with a piercing, unforgiving stare. "Don't tell me to chill. You're part of the problem." Jim and Chrissy's once unbreakable balance had been upset. Chrissy stormed, emotionally raw and enraged. The sound of her heels reverberated down the corridor as she headed towards her dressing room. Jim trailed a few paces behind, muttering to himself, his expression a mask of bewilderment and rage. Every moment was being recorded by rolling cameras. However, the crew was unprepared for the intensity of what was happening. Voices became even more heated inside the changing room. Jim defended his devotion to those who had supported him through thick and thin, but Chrissy accused him of constantly putting his crew above their relationship. Words spilled out that had been suppressed for years, unadulterated and unrefined. The emotion in the room was evident despite the efforts of the production personnel to mediate. According to crew workers, it was the most heated dispute they had ever seen between the two. Jim's jaw was tense, his shoulders were set, and his words were cutting, all signs of irritation. Chrissy's distress was equally apparent. Her voice trembled with a mixture of hurt and rage, and tears filled her eyes. Chrissy's emotions got the better of her at one point. Everyone was taken aback when she started crying, and the sound reverberated throughout the dressing room. Jim froze for a time. I wasn't sure if I should back off or console her. They had handled private arguments and public criticism for years with a level of poise that suddenly seemed unachievable. "You constantly put other people before yourself, Jim," Chrissy yelled in between tears. "You allowed them to treat me disrespectfully. You expect me to simply go on after allowing them to speak down to me." Jim's eyes narrowed as a growing sensation of powerlessness mixed with frustration. "Chrissy, I can't control everyone. I am unable to. I've waited. It's not easy, but I've tried." Tones calm, deep voice attempted to step in once more. "Let's back off a bit. This is not the time to do it." Quad's piercing, accusing eyes went straight through him. "You have no right to advise me to back down. You contribute to the occurrence of this." As the impact of her words set in, the room became silent. Jim rubbed his temples in an attempt to calm himself, but his face was etched with hurt and frustration. His voice strained. "Chrissy, I don't want this to get worse," he added. Chrissy shot back. "I don't want to fight like this." "So Jim, why do we keep getting here? Why is it always a fight? I can't continue doing this. I'm worn out." The dispute continued for hours, emotionally taxing all those involved. Crew members captured snippets of the altercation in silence, fully conscious that the public would analyze this unvarnished and unprocessed scene for weeks to come. The cameras did not record only a disagreement, but the breakup of a partnership, the clash of personal vulnerability, devotion, trust, and celebrity. After a while, Chrissy turned and raced out of the room, leaving Jim motionless for a while. His crew hurried after him in an attempt to soothe him, but it was clear that the night had affected him emotionally. The typically calm rapper was clearly. His shoulders were taut with anxiety, his eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. The energy had irrevocably changed, despite the production team's best efforts to reorganize the set and carry on shooting. Backstage, everyone knew that this was more than just another quarrel. The discovery of long-standing problems that neither Chrissy nor Jim could ignore marked a sea change. By night's end, Chrissy and Jim had both gone to their own places, mentally absorbing what had happened while physically being apart. The disclosed only a fragment of what transpired was captured in the video that would subsequently go viral online. However, that little bit of information was enough to stun the fan base. There was an explosion of analysis, judgment, and conjecture on social media. Under extreme strain, each viewer pieces together the mechanics of a relationship. By the end of the night, one thing was certain. The devotion, trust, and emotional bond had been put to the ultimate test between Jim and Chrissy. What had begun as an apparently routine night on the set turned into a turning point that would affect the course of their relationship, their careers, and their appearance on the show. For weeks, months, and perhaps years to come, the effects of that night would be felt. The public revelation of personal conflicts, the difficulties of negotiating trust and treachery in the celebrity industry, and the unadulterated, unfiltered emotions produced a storm they would both never forget. The true story, one of love, loyalty, annoyance, and the human attempt to strike a balance between private and public life, was being told behind the cameras. It was clear that this night would go down in history as the night that Jones and Chrissy's lives changed. By the time the set was deserted and the lights went out, Lampkin was a night of heartache, treachery, and a watershed that would influence both their relationship and the reality TV industry going forward. The Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set felt uncomfortable, almost oppressive, the day after that violent night. Everyone backstage moved carefully, conscious that the emotional storm between Chrissy Lampkin and Jones had not subsided, and the air seemed thicker than usual. Leaked videos had already alerted fans to what had transpired, and social media was ablaze with conjecture as people analyzed every move, phrase, and face expression. The couple was under tremendous pressure to remain composed while filming because their private problems were suddenly made public. Jim was the first to arrive, his manner stiff, almost robotic. Although his hood was up and his eyes were protected by sunglasses, the stiffness in his shoulders and the tight set of his jaw revealed the internal agony he was experiencing. His crew kept a close eye on him, knowing that any slip-up could lead to another altercation. Tone remained by his side, closely monitoring Jim and the rest of the group. Chrissy came in later, aware that the delicate equilibrium could break at any time. The fatigue from the previous night was visible, and her normally composed and polished appearance was a little shaky. But she kept her cool as she moved around the set and avoided making eye contact with Jim. The production crew proceeded swiftly to establish a distance. Chrissy withdrew to her dressing room, where she concentrated on rehearsing her lines and getting ready for the shoot, knowing that even a small exchange could spark a furious argument from yesterday. The leaked video, which showed Chrissy's emotional collapse and Jim's furious reaction, had already gone viral online, despite the heavy emotional burden from the previous evening. Fans were analyzing the video, arguing about who was at fault, and making assumptions about how their relationship was going. Although only a small portion of the night's events were released, insiders on set claimed that the tape captured unadulterated, real emotions and was sufficient to expose long-hidden flaws. Before production resumed, producers determined that the situation needed to be addressed. In an attempt to negotiate and diffuse the mounting tension, they set up a private meeting with Jim and Chrissy, without cameras. Jim took a seat first, bending back, jaw clenched, arms folded. His normally self-assured demeanor gave way to a mix of annoyance and fatigue. Chrissy showed up a short while later, calm on the exterior, but clearly tense. Her hands were tightly clutched in her lap. The producers were cautious in their speech. "We must determine how to proceed. Fans are responding to the video that has gone viral. You can choose. Deal with it in private or on camera, but it can't interfere with today's filming." The quiet was broken by Chrissy's steady yet forceful voice. "Cameras are not the issue. It's about limits, respect, and years of unsolved problems." The cameras were not involved in that argument. Real emotions and frustration that had been suppressed for too long led to it. At last, Jim's voice was low, but full of passion. "I'm aware that I handled it improperly, but I also didn't anticipate it going public. It was not intended for anyone to see." There was a lot of tension in the room. They both realized that what had happened the night before was more than just a brawl. They exposed long-standing rifts in their relationship. Loyalty had been questioned and trust had been shattered. Knowing that this altercation would determine the course of the remainder of the filming day, the crew members watched in silence. Filming started in the middle of the morning, but the atmosphere was very different. Every exchange between Chrissy and Jim was intense. Every look was laden with unsaid words. The team moved carefully, avoiding anything that might cause another outburst, and even casual conversations were tense. Chrissy confided in a close buddy on set at one time. Silently, she whispered, "I can't keep feeling invisible, like my feelings don't matter." Her buddy acknowledged the high stakes and nodded, expressing support. "He's loyal to everyone else, but when it comes to me, I'm supposed to just take it and move on." When they said, "You're right to feel that way. However, you must also take into account how fans will." In the meantime, Jim had a private meeting with his crew to discuss the leaked tape. React if things escalate again. His voice was strained as he said, "I don't know who did it." As crew members exchanged anxious looks, tensions increased. But someone betrayed the trust of this whole team. We can't have that. No, there was a sense of mistrust throughout the room, but no one wanted to be blamed. Jim's normally composed manner had given way to a restrained ferocity, a mixture of hurt and rage. Jim and Chrissy made an effort to act professionally throughout the day, but the emotional fallout from the previous evening persisted. It was difficult to remain composed during every scene and every sentence. The parts of the debate had already been seen by the public. Their every action was scrutinized, examined, and evaluated. The tension increased during the afternoon. Aware of the atmosphere, Tone walked stealthily up to Jim. "Yo, Jim," he replied. "I think we should talk before it blows up again." Jim nodded, feeling cornered but grateful for the intervention. He was aware that dealing with the root problems were inevitable, but facing them head-on would add to the drama. Eventually, production requested that Jim and Chrissy have a private mediation session. The stakes were enormous, but the cameras were off. Jim was the first to speak, his tone steady yet tense. "I can't deny what happened, but I also don't want another altercation like the one from last night." Chrissy responded coolly but firmly. "I'm not expecting you to overlook it. All I want is recognition and respect." Jim breathed out, "Loyalty that includes me, not just everyone else in your circle." The burden of the night before weighing heavily on him. "You're correct." Rather than listening, I became defensive. "I must perform better." Chrissy became a little softer, but she remained vigilant. Listening alone is not enough. It's about demonstrating that, even in high-stress situations, my feelings are important. The conversation was difficult, drawn out, and emotionally taxing. However, it was a beginning. They both understood that restoring trust would need patience and persistent work. There was no resolution. But that was the first step towards admitting that the meltdown was driven by deeper problems. A surprise revelation later rocked the stage even more. Quietly, Tone brought fresh facts to Jim. "I am aware of the source of the video release. You didn't suspect me or anyone else. Darnell was the one. He claimed that no one would be able to identify him and that he needed money." Jim's response was quick and forceful. "Are you serious, Darnell?" The treachery was severe. For years, Jim's tight group had included Darnell. It struck at the heart of everything he held dear that someone he trusted so much could betray him for financial gain after sharing milestones, studio sessions, and intimate moments. The encounter with Darnell came quickly. Jim's loud voice reverberated along the hallway as he demanded answers immediately. Although security stepped in to stop the situation from getting worse, the emotional toll was evident. He and Chrissy would both have to learn the difficult lesson that trust may be betrayed from inside. From a distance, Chrissy could see how deeply Jim was frustrated. The dispute wasn't solely about her emotions for once. Within their inner